Hi everyone, my name is Samantha and welcome to my YouTube channel, Sewing in Switzerland. So I've seen a lot of videos recently, blogs and all of these kind of, information packets have come out, and it's all, do not make these sewing mistakes, do not do this, do not do that. And it can be really overwhelming, especially if you're new to sewing, or you're a beginner, or you've got a limited budget and you're thinking, oh gosh, I can't make a mistake because I can't afford to repair it, to rectify it, to start again. So there's a lot of information and it could be quite scary, to be perfectly honest. And I wanted to make a counter video to that, just to kind of reassure anybody out there who's perhaps interested in sewing and keeps stumbling across these do not do these lists, because it's terrifying. So I've made 5 important mistakes that you should make when sewing at least once, okay? And to be honest, there's no limit on the amount of times you can do something and do it wrong. I make silly mistakes all the time and I've been sewing for years and years. It's fine, the world keeps turning, it's okay. So I thought we would just kind of come through a few kind of key points for sewing mistakes that you should definitely make. Number 1, sew a project using cheap thread. And I mean, buy some thread from your supermarket, buy it from a suspicious seller on eBay. I don't know, just pick up some thread, maybe some thread that's been in your grandma's sewing kit since the dawn of time, okay? Sew a project using cheap or old thread. And the purpose for this is, I could sit here all day long till I am blue in the face saying, always use branded sewing thread because it is better. It will sew easier, it will make your machine sound nicer, it will look better on your finished project, okay? Cheap thread, it's gonna snap, it's gonna make your machine make strange noises, it's gonna clang, it's gonna clank around, it's gonna snap halfway through sewing a seam. Go for it. And then I have got team potatoes here. They're fast asleep and they're trying to, just kind of off camera, and they're very bored. So if you can hear this kind of huffing and snoring, they're my biggest critics. So yeah, make a project, use the old thread, and then make a counter project using a branded thread, just so you can see the difference. You can really understand it on a visual and visceral level, because it's all very well somebody saying, oh yeah, only use the Gutermann thread, only use the Metz thread, but until you've actually used the cheaper thread and you can ascertain the difference that your machine is making, or the feel of it is different, you will understand it and have a better grasp of it so much better than if you were to just say, oh okay, I'll just buy the pricier thread and have no real kind of understanding of why. So yeah, it's important, I think, to know and experience how different that feels. So use the thread that you found in the back of a cupboard, go for it, and then store why the machine feels so different. Just because you might encounter it down the line, it's just a really good thing to have. It's a really good thing to know, I think, to experience with different threads. It's definitely a mistake to make. Number 2, sew a project wearing headphones. Okay, great, hear me out with this one. The sound that your machine makes, you become so attuned to it that you can eventually, after a few projects, you'll start to hear when that needle is dragging, when it's blunt and it needs replacing. You'll start to hear when it needs an oil, or it's blocked up with gunk and it needs a clean. you can hear and feel the kind of the clanking, and it will make these different noises depending on what it needs. So if you don't normally wear, or you're new to sewing, wear headphones for a project, or, you know, for 15 minutes, and just really acknowledge how sewing is so necessary, not just for your eyes, but also your other senses start to pick up on how your machine is running as well. So it's a really good one. And if you are normally wearing headphones, maybe sew without them for 15 minutes and just acknowledge the noise that your machine makes. So yeah, I don't wear headphones when I sew because I will have like music or a podcast or YouTube playing in the background, but I need to be able to hear the machine, because I need to hear it running smoothly, and that's something that you can kind of pick up very easily and very quickly if you're new to sewing as well. So that would be my sewing mistake, is wear headphones and acknowledge how that feels. Okay, this is fun. Number 3 number 3 is a mean one. Sew a project without, or sew half a project without pressing or ironing at all. Just don't do it. Throw the iron out the window. Well, maybe not out the window, but... And then maybe make the second half of the project pressing, okay? It's so easy for me to sit here and say, using an iron on your seams and press after you've stitched something will change your life, your garment's life. It'll increase its longevity. Your sewing would have such a crisper finish. It would look so much better if you press it. But of course, you know, who wants to get the iron out, especially in summer when it's already really hot? You're thinking, I could probably skip that. Go for it. See what happens. Honestly, make a project, make some pajama trousers or something really simple without pressing any of the seams, and you'll see by the end of it that the side seams look a little bit puckered. It looks a little bit worn. Maybe your hem isn't even, you know, maybe your waistband is a little bit crooked. It makes such a huge difference when you press your seams and you just use an iron in general on your sewing projects. Huge difference, and you can't really comprehend that difference until you've made something and not pressed it. So that would be my sewing mistake. Make something and don't use the iron. Do you know, I feel really naughty just saying these things. Like some sort of sewing goblin's gonna jump out of my cupboard and arrest me or something. So number 4 on my 5 list of mistakes to make. Number 4 is assume you have to be good at maths. I always thought there's absolutely no way I could sew because it's all maths, it's all numbers. Not a hope. And just to really sell home how bad I am at maths, they actually made, when I was at school, a new maths group. So there was like 6 classes, right? And class 1 was, you know, the geniuses of the mathematics department. I don't know. Number 6 was, you could probably count to 10, but I wouldn't maybe risk it. I was so bad at maths that they held a departmental meeting and created a group 7, and I was in it on my own because they said, we just can't teach you maths. You cannot do it. You're terrible at numbers. You're never going to get it. You're never going to be able to do anything. They were actually very mean. I can't remember her name, probably because of trauma, but I do not forgive you, maths teacher. You were very mean. So yeah, it was difficult. I couldn't tell you my times tables. I couldn't tell you any maths equation that I could do. Even telling the time was difficult until I was in my 20s. And yeah, I can self-draft things. I can create things from scratch. I can tailor entire suits if I wanted to, which is all really numbers. Do not let anybody tell you, oh, you have to be good at maths to be able to do this. And the sewing community, there's a lot of numbers heavy people. There's a lot of doctors, architects, designers. who make up a large proportion of the sewing community, especially the sewing community on social media, so Instagram and whatnot. You don't have to be good at maths to be a part of this sewing club at all, okay? If I can do it with 0 math skills, then you can too. And my tips, if you're particularly bad at maths, is to write down the numbers. So visually seeing them helps me understand. I recently created a horse saddle cover for my landlady, and it was a horse saddle that's not actually been made before. It's got like, I don't ride or anything like that, but it's got several humps in the middle, several kind of lumps, and it was basically like making a coat for a camel with no blueprint, no pattern, nothing for it existed, and it was just measuring, it was just maths. And if I can do that, then you can do it if you think you're bad at maths as well. You do not need maths. Write it down, even if it looks like nonsense. Just reach out to the sewing community on social media and say, is anybody available to just fact check my numbers here? And there's always someone, because it's such a lovely group of people that will help. Or send it to me. You know, I couldn't tell you if it was right or wrong, but I'm there for your support. So yeah, you don't need to be good at maths to be, you know, sewing. You can do it. You can do it. Number 5, my very last sewing mistake you should definitely make. Disregard the pattern layout requirements. So I want you to go rogue. 2 fingers up to the grain line. What is the grain line? Who cares? Get your fabric, lay out your pattern pieces and just cut them out willy-nilly. Go for it. Why not? It's the only way, by physically experiencing it and seeing it and feeling it, can you fully comprehend why the fabric is doing what it's doing. Because I, again, could sit here until I'm blue in the face and tell you all about cross grain, grain line, bias, warp, weft. It's just nonsense. It's just sewing jargon, and you don't need to know the words to do the actions. You just need to learn by doing. So just cut out a project and then really examine what the fabric is doing. Is it fraying in certain places? Have you suddenly got a piece that is stretching and the movement, and perhaps maybe it's just changing shape completely because of the way that you've cut it out? And there's reasons for all of this, don't get me wrong, but until you really experience playing with that fabric and just fully understanding what's happening to it, not the why, but just the what is happening to it. So this piece, I cut out this angle and now it's doing this. This piece is pretty stable. From that point, you can really understand why the fabric, and we can move into the why the fabric does what it does. And also how different it feels to sew. Something that you cut on the bias, which is just, you know, at the angle, at the 45-degree angle, is going to sew very differently to something that you cut down the grain line. So just go rogue, just cut it out how you want it. Who cares? Sew it up and see how that feels to physically do. Sewing by experiencing, I personally think, is the best way to understand why the fabric does what it does. And also just don't be scared of it, because there's so many things, right? You have to cut your fabric out, your pattern pieces out in this diagram, and there's no real explanations. So just go rogue, see what happens, see how it feels. Pops your uncle, you've learned something new. So those are my top 5 sewing mistakes to make. So yeah, one mistake you should never ever make. I'm going to be really serious here now. Do not sew with a blunt needle. Every time you turn your machine on, give your needle just a little wiggle, right? It should be pretty straight, but when you wiggle it, there should be a little bit of flex. It shouldn't be doing this. There should just be a little bit of flex to it. It should not be so tight. If it's too tight, it's just going to snap when you sew it. So you want your sewing needle to just have a little bit of flex in it. Now just check it's got that flex, check it's not too loose, check it's not too tight, and also just very gently check that it's not blunt. If your needle is going blunt, change it. If your needle feels too tight or is cracked or is warped or has changed shape or has done anything other than what it should look like, change your needle. I had a really terrifying experience where I was sewing and I was really lucky. I was wearing glasses and the needle was just a little bit blunt. And I was like, well, we could probably get another bit of use out of this. And the needle snapped and shot forwards, and it would have gone straight into my eye at really high speeds if I'd not been wearing glasses. And it was terrifying. So just always check your needle. Do not sew with a dodgy needle or a blunt needle. Just change it out. It's really not worth it. So that is one mistake never to make. Okay. Do you have any sewing mistakes that you would recommend making, or that you do make, or, you know, any corners that you cut? I thought this was just a really fun video to make, and I really enjoyed thinking of the 5 mistakes to make, to be honest. So do let me know in the comments. If you have enjoyed this video, do please like and subscribe if you would like to see more, because it makes me very happy. Thank you so much, and I will see you all soon. Thanks, bye!